Hello and welcome to my astrology channel, and Happy New Year since this is the 1st of January 2020. I will be making this video finally about Venus in Libra in the natal chart. As usual, I will start with the general description of Venus in Libra, aptitudes, interests, strengths, weaknesses, the effect that Venus in Libra has on the male native in terms of his feminine ideal, followed by examples of Venus in Libra and Ascendant in Libra for people to get a better idea of the kind of people that they will find attractive if they have Venus in Libra. Now, if you enjoy this video and you want to see more astrology videos from me, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and leave your comments down below. And for personal consultations, please email me at the email address mentioned in this video description. So, thank you. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, Venus in Libra. Libra is the most aesthetic sign of the zodiac. It is, and what I mean by aesthetic, it's not just like the most aesthetically pleasing or necessarily that all people who have Venus in Libra are super attractive and beautiful, but they will definitely be very interested in beauty and harmony and everything to do with basically aesthetics, art, beauty in all forms, in every levels of life, okay? One thing that I will say right off the bat is that, remember, like I said in previous videos, men will tend to project their Venus energy onto the women in their lives. So if you're a man and you have Venus in Libra, you might be thinking, well, that's, silly, I'm really butch, or like, I'm really tough. It's probably because you are projecting your Venus energy onto the women and you're really kind of, in a sense, disowning your own Venus. And, yeah, that's how you would explain it. But in general, Venus and Libra men, when they don't disown this energy, they can be very artistic, very talented. And you have to understand, it's kind of like, Venus is kind of like, Libra, Venus in Libra will show basically an intellectual form of the artist, whereas, Venus in Taurus is also very strong because Venus naturally rules Taurus and Libra. But Libra, being the air sign and being the seventh sign of the zodiac, is more, let's say, intellectual, also being an air sign. It's much more, well, for lack of a better word, a bit more refined, a bit more intellectual, kind of like, next level in terms of artistry, and they're more interested in arts that mix beauty with usefulness, or like with intellectual pursuits, with the humanities in general, because Libra is a very social sign. It is the sign of partnerships especially. And so these people will be very naturally interested in interpersonal relationships, as opposed to Venus in Taurus, which may not necessarily be that sociable. They will just be artistic and maybe sensual, but they will not necessarily look at art as a way to communicate ideas or to communicate ideals, or to, relate to other people, whereas Venus in Libra will be interested and will be naturally talented in any field that requires working in partnerships or speaking to an audience, because they can really look at the audience as if they are looking at a partner and basically hypnotizing them. It shows, Venus in Libra shows love of class, love of visual arts, architecture, painting, fashion design, photography, drama, writing, etc. Anything that can also be kind of slightly more intellectual as well as artistic. People with Venus in Libra, they tend to be socially graceful and diplomatic, unless Venus is severely afflicted by Mars or Saturn in the chart. They are also naturally good at negotiating, at making contracts, at anything to do with diplomacy. So they tend to make good businessmen, good politicians, maybe even lawyers, depending on all the other aspects and influences in the natal chart. But, one thing that I will say about Venus in Libra in general, irrespective of the other aspects, is that it definitely shows an interest and a talent for diplomacy and interpersonal relationships. So it's a plus to have, because when you think about it, Libra is all about fairness, and it's about win-win situations. And so they make very good leaders, and they make good lawyers, because they are able to maintain the peace, to maintain diplomacy, to maintain harmonious diplomatic relationships, while still leading people, as opposed to, for instance, Aries, that maybe is a so-called natural leader, but can be very abrasive and can easily make a lot of enemies. And, yeah. They will also tend to really hate being alone, probably more than any other Venus placement out there, because Libra, like I said before, it's the sign of partnership. So these people will love to be in relationships. They will love romance. They will be in love with the idea of love, They definitely hate anything that will be coarse or aggressive, whether it's in other people or especially about their romantic partner. But in romantic relationships, they will definitely appreciate, a partner who maintains the magic of a relationship. So again, really hates being alone, unless it is severely afflicted by planets like Mars, Saturn, or Rahu, Ketu. So the women especially, they will definitely dream of marriage. This is the typical, the typical woman who probably grew up dreaming of the white wedding ever since she was very young. Men with this placement, they will really care a lot about physical appearance. This is one of those placements that, will make a man very, kind of, I guess in a way, a typical stereotypical male who will always go for the most attractive woman out there. They like women who are classically beautiful and elegant and intelligent and refined. So these men will definitely not fall for a tomboy or a woman who is aggressive in any way. You have to prove that you are a fine woman, basically, to catch his eye. One example of a man who has Venus in Libra is Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think I mentioned him before in one of my previous videos, not sure which one, but I remember seeing his chart before, and he has Venus, Mars, Sun, Rahu, all in Libra. So, in his case, it's kind of like a mixture of intense energies. But one way that you can definitely see his Venus in Libra acting out is his love of beautiful women. The fact that he also has like Mars and Rahu thrown in the mix will explain the fact that he enjoys being kind of a, confirmed bachelor and is not really in a hurry to settle down with one particular woman. But he definitely likes beautiful women in general. Okay, so examples of Venus in Libra. You have, aside from Leonardo DiCaprio, there is Hillary Clinton, for instance, who has Ascendant conjunct Venus, conjunct Mercury, conjunct Sun in Libra, a giant stellium or multiple conjunction in Libra. And you can clearly see in her case, the fact that she got into politics, the fact that she trained to be a lawyer. I think she also has Jupiter in the second house. which, the second house is kind of like your voice, and to some extent your basic ideas, your mind. And so, her chart, it really shows that this is a person who would do well as a lawyer for sure. And in anything to do with diplomacy, negotiating, being rational, being fair, looking for win-win situations, etc. Now, of course, I'm not gonna try to defend her. I'm European. I don't really care. This is not a political discussion, but just looking at her chart, this is what I see. So, Jodie Foster, Venus conjunct Mercury in the 12th house. I really wrote this down because she was she is a lesbian. She is still a lesbian. But one of the things that I will say is that, Mercury is a so-called asexual, well, maybe not so much asexual, but kind of hermaphrodite sort of energy. And the fact that she has Venus conjunct Mercury, and in the 12th house, which is the house of, on the one hand, bed pleasures, but also, on the other hand, it's the house of everything that is secret and hidden from the world. So one way to interpret this placement could be that she literally had this hermaphroditic sexuality that was also hidden from the world, which obviously I think is very fitting. Another example, Venus in Libra, is Mahatma Gandhi. Venus conjunct Mars, conjunct Mercury, conjunct Ascendant. Definitely somebody who, fought in a peaceful way. Because you have Venus conjunct Mars there, in Libra. And Venus conjunct Mars is something that can show literally love of conflict, love of war. And I think Hitler had this very same conjunction, but I think his was in Aries. So here you have like the opposite, leadership types. One of them has the conjunction in Libra, in which case Venus basically takes over Mars and says, we're not going to do this the messy, aggressive way. We're going to do this the peaceful, non-violent way. And then you have the other one, which has like Mars conjunct Venus in Aries, where you have Mars overpowering Venus, saying, we're going to do this the hard way. We're going to be savage and ruthless in terms of achieving our goals. Okay. Another example, Bill Gates, Venus conjunct Saturn, conjunct Sun. This is a very directed Libra energy. Here you can see like creative, intellectual energy being focused and disciplined. So in his case, I guess it really translated into being a very intelligent computer programmer and creative intellectual. Jim Morrison, Venus in Libra in the 10th house. Venus in Libra in the 10th house is a perfect placement for a singer, because Venus represents singing and represents the voice, and 10th house is pretty much your social status and the way that you achieve it and how the world perceives you. Somebody who has Venus there without any other planets is, well, pretty much going to be known for his singing voice, or just generally for anything to do with artistic talent. And also, if I'm not mistaken, I think he met his partner, his long-term partner, because I'm sure he had many, but I'm pretty sure he met his long-term partner through his career. So through, basically through his career, so like at work or like through acquaintances from work, which again, like if you remember from past videos, I did mention that for a man, the Venus placement by house will show where he meets his future spouse or future long-term partner. And men who have Venus in the 10th house will meet their partners at work or somehow in a field, like through some kind of event which is connected to their career and their professional life. Then you have Jacques Chirac, another politician. Maybe you remember him, maybe you don't. He was the president of France for, I think, over a decade, until around 2007. Sadly, I think he passed away this past year. But he had a very long career in politics. And he also happens to have Venus in Libra in the 10th. So, yeah, it goes to show you that the Libra diplomatic tendencies and love of justice will take them far sometimes. So, another example, Marie Antoinette had Venus conjunct Sun in Libra in the 5th house. Now, this is, again, I wrote down the house placement because this is such a telling placement. You know, she was known ultimately as somebody who was very pleasure-loving and very, not disciplined and totally reveled in the physical pleasures that her position could afford her, which is so, easily described by having Venus conjunct Sun in the 5th house. The Sun is debilitated in Libra in Vedic astrology, and which shows that the Sun is weak, Venus is very strong, and Venus is overpowering. So this person will tend to have a damaged reputation, to say the least. Now this was people with Venus in Libra. And now we're going to go to a few examples of people who have Ascendant in Libra. Ascendant in Libra, now if you're somebody who has Venus in Libra, you will tend to find people with Ascendant in Libra attractive, either physically or personality-wise or just the full package. But this is just to kind of help you illustrate, to kind of help you understand the kind of people that you find attractive if you have Venus in Libra. So, Nicole Kidman has Ascendant in Libra, conjunct Ketu, and Venus, which is the ruler of her Ascendant, is in the 10th house, conjunct Jupiter. Now, maybe this is kind of like a mouthful, but let's break it down here. So she has the ruler of her Ascendant, which is, the Ascendant, remember, is the physical body, and the ruler of the Ascendant also gives hints about the physical body and just generally anything to do with your actual physical traits and your health and everything. And for her, the ruler of her first house is conjunct Jupiter. And again, I've mentioned this in previous videos, people who have any kind of Jupiter influence on the Ascendant, and I would add here the Ascendant ruler, they tend to be above average in height. So, true for her. Also, conjunct Ketu, I may not have said this at any point before, but I'm saying it now. Ketu influence on the Ascendant will give a very, on the one hand, a fragile-looking person. At least that's the impression that they give. It's not necessarily that they are very fragile, weak people, but it can definitely show a lot of sensitivity in a person, and it will show somebody who looks delicate, who looks fragile. And last but not least, Ketu on the Ascendant will give a very pale complexion within the limits of, the genetic inheritance, of course. But I think we can all safely say that Nicole Kidman is a very, very pale person. So yeah. And also the fact that she has the ruler of her first house conjunct Jupiter in Libra in the 10th house, which is the house of career, of status, of, social status, of high achievement in the world. It really matches with her life path, of becoming a very famous actress. And another example, Katy Perry, Venus conjunct Sun, conjunct Moon, conjunct Mercury, conjunct Saturn in the first house, all in Libra. Now, this is a very Libra, but on the one hand, when you have so many planets in one sign or in one house, it is definitely a very concentrated energy of that particular sign. But on the other hand, you also have like this, basically this melange, or like this mixture of planetary energies which are all influencing at once. So it's kind of difficult to see the pure energy at work here. One thing that you can say about her, especially with the Venus and the Moon conjunct Ascendant, is that she is definitely a very good looking person. Above average good looking. Anybody who has Venus conjunct Ascendant, especially, but like any aspect, Venus conjunct or opposite Ascendant, because the conjunction and opposition are the only aspects that Venus can make in Vedic astrology. But I digress. So anybody who has like Venus conjunct Ascendant is above average good looking. Just, that's the end of discussion. And with her, like, you can see all the different energies. Like, maybe it takes a bit of a trained eye, but you can see all the influences of these planets on her appearance. Even the fact that she was naturally a blonde, and she has been dyeing her hair black for a long time now, and she definitely looks better like that, or at least I think so, and most people think so. Can be seen from, Saturn being conjunct her ascendant as well. Saturn, which gives a dark complexion or a tendency to have a dark appearance and personality as well. So maybe she identifies more with the dark hair. Who knows? So, moving on, Lana Del Rey. Now, I am a little bit confused about Lana Del Rey, sorry, but last time I googled her charts, I'm pretty sure I remember her having a different chart placement. So, I don't know, like maybe, I go to the same site to get my information, so maybe, I don't know, they found out that she has a different birth time in the meantime. But now it's like, it shows that her ascendant is conjunct Saturn and opposite Venus conjunct Rahu. I was pretty sure that she had Venus conjunct ascendant, but okay, I digress. So now the latest version is that she is an ascendant conjunct Saturn in Libra. In any case, it works for her. Because you still have, again, Venus, whether it's conjunct, whether it's opposite, you still have the influence of Venus on the ascendant, which shows a very attractive person, and definitely somebody who is interested in glamour and all of that. But now, with Venus conjunct Rahu in the 7th house, it shows a person who is, for lack of a better word, obsessed with relationships. It shows somebody who really had very little to no experience with romantic relationships and partnerships throughout her previous incarnations, and now she has come in this lifetime to really experience relationships. And if you listen to a lot of her music, a lot of it is very dark, depressing, and all of it mostly is about relationships. It's about, the heartaches of relationships and fetishes and romance and whatnot. And so, in any case, this combination of energies of having her ascendant, her Venus, Rahu, and Saturn really strongly interaspecting one another, it really shows this kind of dark, romantic vibe that she gives off. So, yeah, in any case, she definitely has a very artistic energy in her chart. Grace Kelly, another example of a woman with ascendant conjunct Venus, conjunct Mercury, conjunct Ketu, all in Libra. Now, again, Venus conjunct Mercury and Ketu, this is like a really delicate and somewhat androgynous, well, again, maybe not androgynous, but I think the word that most texts use to describe Mercury is eunuch, quote unquote. So it's not necessarily androgynous, but literally something that is asexual. So think of like a prepubescent child or something, somebody that is really not of a definite sexuality, like feminine or masculine, but rather, somewhere in between, let's say, or neither. And I mean, people may not agree with me, but like I tend to see that with Grace Kelly. Like Grace Kelly had this very delicate, fragile aura, again with Ketu there on the Ascendant as well. She was definitely very beautiful, but she was also kind of beautiful in this very sort of, delicate, soft, fine way, like not in a voluptuous or overtly sexual way, which a lot of it just has to do with being an ascendant in Libra to begin with, because Libras, especially the women, they love to be classy and, modest, and definitely not the type that will try to showcase her curves or or try to get attention in any vulgar way. So yeah, it could just be that, but I think in her case, having Ketu and Mercury there, it also shows this kind of like a fragile, almost childlike energy, feminine energy. So yeah, and again, very pale. Rachel McAdams, also Venus conjunct Ascendant in Libra. Like, what can I say more? A very beautiful woman and also a talented actress. So, perfect energy for an artist. So, just a few examples of men who have Ascendant in Libra: Sigmund Freud, Clint Eastwood, and James Franco. So, yeah. So if you have like Venus in Libra, and you find any of these people attractive, and you can just further Google, people, but I would suggest that when you look for people who have Ascendant in Libra, you actually search for people who have Ascendant in Scorpio, and then try to see which of them have their Ascendant in 20 degrees Scorpio or less, because those will have Ascendant in Libra based on the sidereal zodiac. And that's the one that I use. So, this is it. I hope you found it useful and interesting, and I hope you give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see any more videos, or you have suggestions of what other videos you might want to see in the future, please comment below the video. Thank you.